Hello everyone, welcome back to Pepper's Pages. Today I wanted to talk about every book that I read in 2025, which was 18 books. If you've watched any of my other videos or have been around for a while, you already know that I used to read a heavy amount of books. Back in 22, 23, I think I had up to 88. Mostly I was reading a lot at the time because I had more time, honestly, and I was trying to keep up with all the other, content creators that were reading high volumes of books. I'm saying like 100 to 150 every single year. There were some people that were reading up to 20 books in a month. I was desperately trying to keep up with that at the time, and I just really wasn't actually absorbing what I was reading and giving myself time to enjoy it. So in the last couple of years, I've changed my reading goal to about 50, and that way I can enjoy it and take in every single part of a book and actually remember it, instead of coming on here and being like, well, I sped through this book, liked it, but I don't remember a whole lot about it. So we're definitely taking things very slow. I believe year before last I had close to 50, if not 50. We definitely did not get close to 50, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it because everything I read I enjoyed for the most part. I don't think there's anything really on here that I absolutely hated. There weren't any books that I stopped reading because I wasn't enjoying them. So that's a really good feeling. Even though it is a low number and I was a little hard on myself towards the end of the year for not reading more, I have to remember circumstances and that everything is in a race. If you aren't reading as many books as the content creators that you're seeing, don't feel bad. Everybody has their own pace. So with that said, I'm going to start with the first books that I read throughout the year, all the way down the 18 books to what I finished in. I think the last one was read in November. I started reading King Sorrow by Joe Hill, which is his new book, in December. So that one I'm still working on now, and it's February. So we're going to see how that goes, but that's why I didn't have anything for December. There were actually a few months last year that I didn't read anything at all. So starting off the year pretty strong with Rebecca by Daphne Demure. I'm so sorry. I know I'm horrible at pronouncing names. I believe it's Daphne Demure, but I'm probably butchering that. So I started off reading this physically. The copy that I have, the text is really, really small and cramped, so it was very hard for me to get through it physically. I got maybe a quarter of the way in and switched over to audio because it was just a little bit easier and I did not want to have to go hunt down another copy. I gave this book a 4. It's an older book. I want to say it came out sometime in the 30s or 40s, something like that. I may be a little off. But it is essentially about this woman who marries into a family where the previous wife has passed away. She was very beloved. Rebecca was. Everyone in the house adored her. They thought she hung the moon. But this new woman comes in, and you can tell that this is going to be a different kind of ghost story. So I read I think it's called The Life and Death of Jane Lawrence, or just The Death of Jane Lawrence, I'm not sure. This felt very close to that. I know this is the original of that type of story. But the thing about The Death of Jane Lawrence is it takes its own path, and so I feel like if anyone ever tells you, oh, they're the same book or anything like that, honestly, just give it a chance for yourself, because this is a different type of ghost story. It is not a presence that lives in the house physically. It is a feeling, it's memories, it's grief that just clings to every single wall of this house and does not let go. It's not Rebecca herself that's actually haunting. It's how everyone else felt about her. And that's something I really, really liked about this book. It struck me very strong, because most of the time you get these gothic horror tales and it's an actual ghost. It's some deeper, bigger entity that's kind of wreaking havoc on these people's lives. But in Rebecca, it's more of a slow burn. It's, like I said, it's all of these feelings coming together and creating this non-existent entity where everyone else is placing her because her presence is still so strong within this family. I thought it was a really good book. I do wish I could have read it physically instead of through audio, but that's not the author's fault. That's just a printing issue on my part. I guess it's an opinion thing, because I'm sure some people could read that kind of text and it'd be fine. But Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, really good. I highly recommend it. If you're into more gothic tales than anything, just know again that it's not an actual ghost story. It's more about the sense of dread and anguish that this woman feels at not being able to be accepted within this family and feel that she's not good enough to be with her husband. Next, we have Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is actually the author that our son gets his namesake from. We thought about naming him Fyodor, but figured here in America that's going to be a little hard to get away with. We didn't want him to get picked on or anything, as much as I do like the name. Theodore works a little bit better here. I actually read Brothers Karamazov last year, maybe the year before, and I really enjoyed that. So I thought that I would try something a little bit shorter by Dostoevsky. So I read the Notes from the Underground. I get the feeling all of his stories are kind of the same. It's just this man, essentially, like something weird's going on with this dude. He's kind of losing his mind because he can't confirm whether or not it's actually happening. So that kind of seems to be on theme. There's a lot more to Dostoevsky's work, but I would like to discuss that a little further in another video. But I gave this one a 3. It was just really short, quick little read, and I liked it a lot. Then we have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I gave this one a 4.5. I've been looking for this book for many, many years, but the only place I could really find it was at like Barnes & Noble for $50. I was not going to pay that, honestly, and especially since there are so many different editions of this story. The one that I managed to get a hold of, I believe I found it at a half price, and I was very thankful for that. But it was a full color edition, which means that every instance of the word house was in blue. It added a little bit more to the story, I feel like, than it would have been just in black and white. And that's crazy to say. That's the thing about this book, is it is just a monster in itself because of all of the details that were added into it, the things that you have to think about on top of all this mind-numbing information that you're receiving through these theses that were added in to enhance the story. Honestly, if you haven't read House of Leaves, or if you've wanted to, I suggest getting on that, because this was definitely an undertaking. I think it took me probably a good month to finally get through it. Again, I didn't have a lot of time to read because I was working 2 jobs at the time, and so it made it a little bit slower to get through, but I think that helped, honestly. If I had had more time, I would have tried to jump into this with both feet and get through it as fast as possible. And I think that slowing down and reading it in chunks helped me get the information that was being handed to me, process it, and then think like, oh, okay, this is how this fits together. I know that's how thinking works, but when it comes to this book, I think that is very important, because you go into it thinking it's just going to be like this really strange house that's changing around these people. It's probably haunted, right? It is so much more than that. It is a completely different realm. It is not even an entity at this point. It is just the morphing of a different universe with ours in this one house, and you're watching these characters fall apart. Their lives are tanking, and so many people get sucked into this situation, and it's just very sad, but it's fantastic, honestly. I think my least favorite part about this, and I believe I do have a longer discussion on this in another video, but one of my biggest issues with this was how much the main narrator, who's like putting this book together, talks. I get the premise behind it, but I think that that's kind of what took me out of it a little bit. That's a preference thing. It's really not anything that's wrong with the book because it adds to the story. You're watching this man disintegrate, essentially, like mentally. He's losing his mind over this book. You're not sure if what he's saying is the truth or if it's just because he's beginning to unravel. But I thought that the premise was very, very good. The whole book was just absolutely terrifying. I had this horrible sense of dread the entire time. I'm so glad that I finally got a hold of this and that I own a copy now because I can go back and revisit it anytime that I want to. I have seen rumors, I don't know how true they are, revolving around the possibility that Markiplier has bought the rights to make House of Leaves. I hope that's true. I haven't seen Iron Lung yet, but I've heard great things about it. So, I mean, if anybody's going to try, why not let it be him? Because I could not even imagine how you would begin to take this and turn it into a film. Unless you make it like some sort of documentary type situation. But yeah, so that's just what I've heard. No supporting like evidence behind that he's actually going to do it, but we never thought he'd be making a movie, right? So the fourth book that I read in 2025 is Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. I initially had no interest in reading Darcy Coates' books. I think that was just because none of them really stuck out to me. But last year I was watching Gab Smulders. If you know who she is, she's a gamer on YouTube. I love her and all of her stuff she does. But she occasionally will post on her secondary channel her quick little like book reviews that she does for each month. She mostly reads horror, and that's what I love. Anything horror is great. So she had recommended this one, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. Gallows Hill follows our main character, and forgive me if I can't remember names through most of this. I can't even remember what today is, but our main character returns to Gallows Hill after not having been there since she was a child. Some strange circumstances with her family meant that she had to move far away. She never grew up with her parents. Her parents mysteriously pass away, and she returns to take over the family business to decide whether she's going to continue running it or if she's going to close it down and sell it. Little does she know, there's some strange things happening on this property and a really dark past that has to do with her family and some others that are involved. And honestly, the reasoning behind the wine and how it's made was just really gross. I liked this book. Honestly, it wasn't my favorite. I don't know that I'm really jumping at the bit to go grab another Coates book, but I enjoyed this one. I will say I am not into adding romance for the sake of just having a romance. I think that's what slowed this book down. I wanted to see our main character experience these horrors, figure out how to deal with it, and take care of it. I really didn't need to hear about how hot she thought her love interest was. I didn't need to see him be her savior in any kind of way. Ultimately, she is the one who saves the day, but it feels a little cheap to me. But, I mean, it's just, again, it's a preference thing. I gave that one a 3. That's usually kind of what I give books that I feel a little lukewarm on, that weren't bad, but also weren't the best things that I've ever read. So, I don't know. Gallows Hill, I recommend it. If you already like Darcy Coates and you need something else to read by her, pick it up. But I don't know that I'm really going to be sprinting to grab the next one. Next, we have our old friend Junji Ito. I actually read several of his books last year, which is honestly not a surprise. I'm just going to name off all the Junji Itos that I read this year so we can get them out of the way, since they're all short stories and it would take forever to describe each of them. First, we had Shiver, then Tombs, and then we had Soichi. Soichi actually went to the hospital with me. I thought I was going to have time to read. Crazy. It sat in my purse the entire time, and I was so embarrassed because I know all those nurses were looking at the cover like, what is this girl doing? But I love Junji Ito. I like all the stories that he's put out. I couldn't give you a favorite one out of these because just last year in my brain are so fried at this point. But I do remember liking all of them. So, that, I mean, I gave them each a 3.5. Well, I gave Shiver a 3.5, Soichi and Tombs a 3.75. I'm sure it's probably because there was a story in there that I really liked of those two. But I love Junji Ito. As I mean, back here I have my collection still. He's forever gonna stay right there on that shelf. I can't wait to add some more, but I don't know that I'll add these. I read these from the library. Then we have Inferno by Dante Alighieri. I read this as a buddy read. I've always been very interested in experiencing his stories. Everyone talks about it. It's used in so much media. I've actually talked on my TikTok channel about the, I believe, 2010 video game adaptation that was released, which is absolutely nothing like the book. Let me just give you a heads up. It is a trip. If you have no idea what that game is, please go look it up. It is something else. But I played that game as a kid. You have so many different adaptations and reinterpretations of this story. So I wanted to give the actual thing a try. I gave it a 4. It did take me a long time to get through. I think maybe a month and a half, because of the language that was used. I am not used to reading poems, and especially poems that are written in such an old fashion. I figured it out. It worked out just fine, but it did take me a while because I would have to read a few lines and then process what was said and then move on. That's an error on me because I need to work on that and read more so I can be more familiar with it. This was great. Some of the imagery in this was unbelievable for its time, to be honest with you. I can't believe that there were fart jokes. That one of them even went past me completely, and my partner had to point it out to me before I was finally like, oh, that's what he meant by that. So interesting. I'm excited to move on to Purgatory, which is the next one, and then Paradiso or Paradise is the last one. I don't know that I will jump into them anytime soon because I have so many books that I want to read. My goal this year is to get through the vast majority of all my unread books that I own, and that's over 100. So it'll probably be next year or the year after that before I get to the next Dante book. If you haven't read Inferno, I highly recommend it. If you can find an old copy that's annotated, that's how I did it, and it honestly helped me understand quite a bit. If you know somebody who's read it, reach out to them. Like, don't be afraid to ask them for their interpretation or translation of it, I guess is a good way to say it. The original book or poem was written in Italian, but I read a Barnes & Noble Classics version, and in the back, or either in the front or the back, I believe it was in the front, they had each stanza, each page pretty much, we'll just put it that way because I'm not one to read poems or know much about them. They had like a Spark Notes type thing where it would tell you in plain terms, like, this is what's going on, this is what's being said. So if I got lost or if I didn't understand what was going on, I could refer back to that, and that made it so much easier. So I highly recommend getting either a really thickly annotated copy with someone who understands what's being said, or getting something like the Barnes & Noble Classics copy. Next, we have The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I honestly don't even remember what I rated this one. I have very mixed feelings about this book. I did not think it was bad. I was not happy about the ending, honestly. And there was a little bit in the middle where it felt like the pacing slowed down pretty bad because it's exciting waiting for them to get into the house, and to learn exactly what they're doing. But then there were parts where it was just like, okay, they're all sitting around waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to happen. Then it finally happens and things are exciting, and then you're waiting again. I did watch the movie. I think I liked the ending of the book quite a bit more. The movie was okay. I really enjoyed seeing Dave Bautista in it. It's weird seeing him with the shirt on. I'll say that. And I also never realized how big he actually is. Like, I mean, you imagine he's a pretty big guy, right? But next to these people, he's towering over them, and I would have been petrified by him. Good book. If you're into, like, mysteries, this is a good mystery. I think it was mostly just, like, the build-up was so strong, and then it's really left up for interpretation, and I think that bothered me a little bit. And it's not the fact that it was left up for interpretation, because I do enjoy books like that. I think the issue was how they went about it. And I get the themes of the book and what it's trying to talk about, but I think maybe it wasn't just what I was looking for or as strong as I was hoping for. And there are differences in the book and the movie. I think I talked about it in another video. I can't really get into it right now because we have some other books to cover. But there was enough differences for me to be like, okay, I liked this way more in the book, or I liked this way more in the movie. But by themselves, I'm a little lukewarm on the whole thing. Okay, our first 5. I only had 2 5s for all of 2025. I'm used to having at least 10, like doing a whole video just for 5. But this is Hex by Thomas Olde Heuvelt. I have another video about him as well. Most of these do. I just kind of stumbled upon his book. I had seen it in the store a lot and thought that the cover was very interesting. I had read the blurb on the back a little bit, and I don't really remember. I think I just had a Barnes & Noble card, and I was like, I've seen this plenty of times. Let me just grab it and try it. And thank God I did, because this was absolutely fantastic. Hex centers around this small town that's been cut off completely by society, or from society, because they have a curse over them, in which a witch from the past who was forced to prematurely expire due to the village at that time believing that she was a witch. So she appears at different places in town. She's covered in chains. She looks terrifying. Her eyes are sewn shut. Her mouth is. But in an incident, part of her stitches had been removed from her mouth. So now when she whispers, it causes people to harm themselves. The build-up was great. The story is fantastic. The characters were good. I believed every single decision that they made, and it felt really concrete in why they were making those decisions. I don't really have any complaints about this book. It was terrifying. It was gripping. I remember starting this book, and I finished it within a week or two because I was just so hooked by everything that was happening, the way it was all laid out, and just this poor woman. You end up rooting for Catherine, which is the witch in the end, because her whole story is just so sad. She just was done so wrong, and I was not expecting that. I figured that I would, root for our main characters, like, this is a curse, right? Well, when you find out what actually happened, it's really heartbreaking. The book started off really interesting because it honestly confused me a bit, because the opening is Catherine standing in the middle of a road, and the town is trying to cover her up, and they put an organ over her, and I was just really confused at first until it dawned on me, this is an active haunting, and they're trying to keep anyone from the outside world from figuring out what's going on. And then there's a scene where she appears in the main character's home, and they just kind of brush it off and call her like grandma or something. Like, they refer to her as if she's family. They throw like a doily or like a towel over her face. And it was just like the most interesting way to open up a book, because you're getting this horrifying character, but she's being put into the strangest situations. And it kind of dulls her scary for a minute until things really kick off and you're like, oh, she's not just some active ghost. She is like a real threat to these people. But also the people in this book are a huge threat to themselves. So, fantastic book. If you haven't read Hex by Thomas Olde Heuvelt, I really recommend it. I actually picked up another one of his. I can't remember if it's Echo or the other one. Oracle, I think is what it's called. But I'm really excited to get into that too because this one just felt so strong for me. Then we have Weaveworld by Clive Barker. If you, again, have been following me for a while, you know that I am a huge, huge fan of Clive Barker. I initially started off with his work, Books of Blood. I read that years ago, around the time that the Hulu movie came out, which was very, very different from the book. There wasn't anything from that directly in there, but it was a good movie. I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, so I can't really give a good review on that, but I did really love that book, and it kind of set me off on a journey into Clive Barker. I've read quite a bit of his work, and most of it's impressed me. I think that this is probably my least favorite. I gave it a 4 because I thought it was a fantastic story. Really good world building, really good characters. But I think that it just wasn't the type of story that I was looking for. When I go into Clive Barker, I want graphic horror. I want the most disgusting situations that you can get into, which is surprising considering how much I've seemed to have softened over the years. Because I used to watch things like Final Destination and Saw without ever being bothered by it, and now I have a really hard time with those things. I think the difference is the fact that this is in print, and I can make up whatever I want in my head, so it's not nearly as bad as what's actually on the page, because he can be pretty gratuitous with the body horror aspects of things. My mind goes straight back to, what was that one called? Everville. That was one of the first books that I read by him. I had no idea that it had a first book to it. I thought it was a standalone book. But Weaveworld was good. It follows, I believe his name was Cal, but our main character is just some regular nobody who lives with his dad, or whose dad is like kind of helpless in a way after he lost his wife, or our main character's mom. He takes care of him. He starts noticing that some strange things are going on around town, and comes across it's a long story, but he comes across this carpet and learns that this magic world has been weaved into it to protect it, and him and a couple of other characters have to work together to protect that realm and the magic behind it. Again, great story, great characters. Everything about it was really wonderful. Not my favorite Clive Barker, and I think that's why I only gave it a 4 and not a 5. Just because it wasn't as heavy in horror as I would have liked it to have been. It was more along the lines of fantasy. So, if you like Clive Barker and you haven't read Weaveworld, I suggest it, because it was a pretty good story. That's another one that I picked up on audio. I've seen it on the shelf a lot, and it was just so hefty. I kind of felt overwhelmed by it, maybe a little intimidated, so I picked it up on audio just to be able to get through it a little bit faster. I did start it actually with a library copy and got a good ways in before I finally was like, this has taken me way too long to get through it. I think I was very close to the due date coming up, and I was like, let's just nip this in the butt and finish it on audio. And I'm glad I did, because it was a really good performance that I listened to. Okay, this one is a really good one, and it's mostly for sentimental reasons. The 10th book that I read in 2025 was Murder by Cheesecake by Rachel Ekstrom Courage. This was brought home for me. I had no idea that it even existed. I believe that it was published in 2025, so it's a fairly new book. But this is centered around the Golden Girls and a certain dilemma that they are put into and have to figure out how to get out of. So a quick summary of this story is Rose has a niece that wants to get married, but she doesn't want to get married in St. Olaf. She has asked Rose to help her put this wedding together. Rose wants to give them the St. Olaf wedding, the best one that's ever happened, but she has to do it in Miami, so there's a lot of issues happening behind this because she has a lot of tradition that she has to follow and elders who have come along for this wedding that she has to make sure approve of everything that happens. On the side, Dorothy is looking for a man. She ends up... So back in the day, there used to be a way of dating, kind of like online dating, except for you would sign up for the service, pay for it. They would send you videotapes or VHS tapes. Hi, baby. Come on. They would send you VHS tapes and you would sit down, watch it. The VHS tape was full of people who were also looking... I love you too, baby. Thank you for the sugars. Can you lay down? Anyway, so this is like-minded people who are also looking for a relationship, and Dorothy is trying to pick out a man. She finds one that she is really interested in. They connect over the phone, and they meet up for a date. Her date's acting very strange. She thinks that maybe he's embarrassed to be there with her because of her age. She starts overthinking things, becomes very insecure, and ultimately leaves the date very upset. Well, her and the girls go to the hotel where Rose is planning on hosting this wedding, and while inspecting the kitchen and everything, they find Dorothy's date has been murdered. Wild. Honestly, a really, really fun, cozy murder mystery. Through all this, there's drama. The regular Golden Girls. Like, just, that's the best way I can put this. It really, really felt like an episode of Golden Girls that was just really long. There is another episode that felt kind of like this, and it's the one where they go to the hotel for a murder mystery party. They have dinner, they have to solve the crime and figure out who done it. That's very much how this one felt. There were a few things in this that were kind of out of character, and that's why I gave it a 4.75 instead of a 5. It was just because there were little things that I was like, okay, that character wouldn't have said that or done that. It did not take me out of the story. The Golden Girls happened, 40 years ago? 30, 40 years ago? So it's going to be a little hard to still capture those characters. I'll give her that. The description in Stack Books, I believe that's the name of the app that I use to keep up with my books. This says that this is the first book in a series, so I'm really hoping that more come out because they can only get better from here, right? Really fun. That was awesome. I'm very glad that it was brought home for me. I ate that one up pretty quickly too because it was just so much fun. It was like getting a whole new episode that you've never seen before, and for somebody who has watched The Golden Girls since I was very, very little, I've seen them all. Well, except the last episode, and I want to bring this up right now. Me and my partner recently watched the very last episode of Golden Girls. I've never seen it. I don't know how I have never seen it. Why the hell does it end so sad? I'm so confused. We were very shocked, like both of us just had our jaws on the floor because they kind of shoehorn in this love interest for Dorothy, and her love interest is played by Leslie Nielsen, who is known for like Naked Gun and like comedy and other comedy movies and things like that. Felt very shoehorned in. I think out of all the relationships of hers that I liked the most, Dick Van Dyke was probably my favorite boyfriend of hers. Beside the point. But the episode ends with Dorothy getting married. She's leaving. She's planning on taking Sophia with her. The house is breaking up. They're all crying. And I'm like, there's, Dorothy has this big gag where she keeps coming in from different rooms to say goodbye again. And then it ends with her not coming back. Sophia decides to stay, and all the girls hug each other and start crying, and it ends. It's just over. I understand that their whole thought process behind that was maybe they could get B. Arthur to come back, because from what I've read, she didn't necessarily want to leave. And I think they were hoping that they could pick up after one season of The Golden Palace and bring her back, and then they could just continue on from there. And it never happened. So now, perpetually, Golden Girls ends on the saddest note you could possibly imagine. And it broke my heart. I had to mention that because it's just been on my mind for the last 2 months since we watched that, because I absolutely could not believe that they would end on such a sad note. Okay, tangent over. Let's move on to the next book. Then we have When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I gave this one a 5. It is one of my only 2 5s from this year. I love Nat Cassidy so much. If you know me or have watched my videos, you know I will rant about this man all the time if I can. He has Mary, An Awakening of Terror, Nestlings, this, Rest Stop. He's currently working on a collection of short stories, which I'm very excited to come out. I saw that on Blue Sky recently, and I just about lost my mind because my favorite authors are starting to to release books again. Not that Nat has really stopped, but it's progressively getting more and more frequent when he releases stuff. So When a Wolf Comes Home follows our main character. She's just kind of like a sad waitress at this little lowly diner. She accidentally pricks herself with a needle from the bathroom while cleaning. She freaks out and goes home and meets this little boy who is running from a monster. That monster clearly is a werewolf. That's not really giving any spoilers. That's the entire book. They're running from a werewolf. This little kid is terrified. This is a ride. I am not into vampires or werewolves, but I will say, and whenever I picked this up, I was a little hesitant because I was concerned. I was like, I'm really not, I don't know if I'll like this. But it is such a breath of fresh air compared to most, werewolf stories. There's, if you've ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there's characters in there that are the weasels, as well as, Christopher Lloyd is also in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it sounds crazy to even try to bring this up because it's so random, and I did not even see it coming, but those characters are in this book. It's honestly terrifying. But this little boy has a special ability, as the main character learns, and the final showdown is incredible. Oh my god. I stopped everything I was doing for an entire day just to finish this book because I was mind blown at the direction that it takes, how it ends. It is just so tragic. It broke my heart, but it was splendid from start to end. There was nothing in this that I could really complain about or critique right off the top of my head, because I just overall enjoyed this so much. I really think that if I had to rank his books in order, it would be Mary, An Awakening of Terror, which was his debut, When the Wolf Comes Home, then probably Nestlings, and then Rest Stop. This one was up there. It was really good. If you've read any Nat Cassidy, or if you haven't, I really suggest looking into him. I'm going to keep ranting about him. If you've seen my other videos about his books, you know I can talk forever about it. But I gave that one a 5. Absolutely spectacular book. Okay, Cuckoo by Gretchen Felker-Martin. This one was okay. I gave it a 3. I still feel very mixed on it. I was excited at the fact that it was inclusive of the LGBTQ community. I have read some conversion camp-ish type books that are horror and didn't really think that they were very strong. This one held in there. It was not the strongest one I've read on that topic, because that's usually a very horrifying thing to talk about, just in general, even if it's not in a horror book. The issues I had with this was it's not insanely consistent, and it also had It vibes by Stephen King. We start off the beginning. I would say the vast majority of this book takes place with them as kids, and then the ending skips forward a bit so they can come back and take care of this monster or the entity or whatever it is that's haunting them. I think it could have stuck with just the kids, destroying it and moving on. It felt like the book ended and then we just kept going into their adult years in this thing that already should have been done. Another problem I had, and it runs along the lines of It again, the controversial scene in It with the kids underground. If you know what I'm talking about, that's already a huge problem as it is, and I'm very outspoken about how I feel about King and some of the things he writes about. There's a scene in this that feels very on brand with that, and it bothered me. If you're going to have a split story with kids and adults, why not put that part with the adults? Why leave it with the kids to do the things that you were making them do? And for what reason are we making these kids do these things? It just does not seem rational. Cuckoo did not necessarily get as graphic as I believe I hope I'm remembering right, but in it was really hard to get through that scene in particular. This one was just like, oh, okay, this is weird. I don't feel right reading this. So that was the biggest issue for me in this, was just, why did that have to be in here? Why couldn't they connect another way? Why does it have to be that specifically? Overall, it was a good book. Another one that I felt pretty lukewarm on. Like I said, I gave it a 3, and that's my lukewarm rating. I don't know. I really had higher expectations for this book, especially since I've heard so many glowing reviews about it. Maybe it just wasn't my kind of story. I don't know, but it was that scene in particular really stopped me in my tracks, and I was like, wait a minute, okay. It immediately got marked down because I don't have it in me to rationalize that kind of stuff, so I don't know. A good book. I mean, if you want to read it, if you've read her other book and you liked it, which I haven't, and I honestly don't know that I'll read any other books by her, give it a try. I'm not going to knock it. Just because I had issues with a few parts doesn't really mean anything, but just a heads up, maybe like content warning. There are some situations in this that kids are put into that aren't necessarily the best thing to be writing about. Strange Pictures by Uketsu. This, I've seen it around on the internet a bit. He has another one called Strange Houses. I really wanted to read that one, but I heard that Strange Pictures is the stronger of the two books. Uketsu is, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, I believe I'm saying it right because I heard Gab say it, but Uketsu is a anonymous YouTuber from Japan, I believe. I've never watched any of their stuff. Personally, I've looked them up a little bit just to get an idea of who they are as a human. This was fantastic. I did give it a 3.75 just because there were some parts in there that I was like, all right, let's get this on. But it is short stories. I think it was 4 short stories. They are broken up. They all cover specific weird photos that are connected with the story, and every single story is enmeshed with itself later on. So the best way to describe this is our main character has this really, really strange mother, and this mother does a lot of really weird things, and like it's hard to explain it because if I try to explain it to you, it's going to give something away because it all is set up in each short story and comes together in the end. They give you a photo. They explain like a little backstory behind it of someone trying to figure out what this photo is. And then in the end, it comes together. For example, one of them is this person found an old blog. Someone was keeping up with a pregnancy that was happening with his wife or his partner. Things go south and they're trying to figure out exactly what happened and what these pictures mean inside of this situation that has happened. And the way it's laid out is really good, I thought, because you don't know anything about what's happening and it gives you a little bit of information, and then later it gives you something and you're like, wait a minute, okay, I understand how this connects now. And the overall picture or story is just very sad, very tragic, but I thought it was a fantastic book in the way that it was laid out. I'm sorry I can't give a better description than that. It's just really hard not to give anything away with this book. But I highly suggest it if you see it anywhere. Pick it up, give it a shot. I might try Strange Houses in the future, but like I said, that one I've heard is not that strong. We got another Nat Cassidy. I mentioned this one a while ago. So I read When a Wolf Comes Home, got a Barnes & Noble gift card, and decided, hey, I'm going to see if he has any other work. I had a picture saved in my phone from a really long time ago of Rest Stop, and I thought, okay, I'm going to order that and try it, even though it's like a shorter story. I'm glad I did. This one follows, I believe his name was Abe. He has gotten a phone call that a family member of his is passing, and he needs to get there. He does not like this family member. This family member has kind of tormented him his entire life. So he's not very happy about it. He is described as like a metalhead who's like in a metal band, and he's just kind of a grumpy character. So on the way, he stops at a gas station and doesn't realize that all the cars in the parking lot are like dirty, like they've been sitting there for a long time. He goes in to use the restroom and slowly realizes that he is being hunted by someone who's in the gas station. They put snakes in through the vents while he's in the bathroom. He eventually gets out, and the scene that he finds out in the main area of the gas station it's disgusting, and it's brutal, but it was a great story. It was very tense. Just him the whole short story, it's very, very small. I can't get to it right now. I don't know if you could see it up there. It's this book right there, that little white one. Very short, very to the point, and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave this book a 3.5, and I think that was mostly because it was shorter. I think it kind of deserved a 4, but we're going to stick with what I gave it. If you want to start with something smaller for Nat Cassidy, and you like the grotesque, I suggest this one because it was fun. It was short. I got through it within like a day or two, I think, and it really made its point. I don't know. I'm just a sucker for Nat Cassidy too, though, so take that how you will. Ushers by Joe Hill was something that I picked up on Audible. It is an Audible exclusive. It was only about an hour and a half, maybe, long. And I listened to it a little bit faster, so I probably got through it about half an hour. This one follows a man who can see entities before someone passes away. And he is being interviewed because he was around or involved in an incident. He's talking to these police officers about what happened, and you kind of learn about him and what he sees. It was really good. That's the best explanation I can give without really giving it away because it is so short. I love anything Joe Hill. I did notice that he has a lot more on Audible that are exclusives, but I don't want to spend my credits on them just because they're so short. So eventually I might, if they ever become free or something like that, or if they put it into a larger collection, because I do like his short stories a whole lot. But I gave this one a 3.5 just because I really loved the ending. It was exactly what I was hoping would happen. It was very into Frighteners. If you know what that is, then that's kind of a hint for what happens. So, alright, last book of the year is Damned by Palahnuik. I kind of swore him off a year or two ago after reading Snuff and Choke. Snuff really messed me up. I did not like that, especially in light of special OnlyFans person at the time doing the same type of situation. I don't want to say names or like talk about it in detail because I find it disgusting myself. But it's kind of the same premise as that without having to actually explain it. That one got me bad enough to the point that I was like, okay, no more Palahnuik, he's too intense for me. I think that was ultimately it, is he's just too intense for me. This one was not that bad. This was picked up at a book sale at the library for me. I was a little hesitant at first when I read the back and realized that it was about a teenager instead of adults this time. But honestly, I thought this was a wonderful book. So, Dam follows a teenage girl who has passed away and been condemned to hell. She chalks it up to ODing on the green, the best way I can put that. I don't know what I can get flagged for on here. She's a very unreliable narrator. A lot of the stuff she tells you learn is not true. Her passing is way more traumatic than what she's playing it off as. But it's just her roaming around hell with a bunch of other teenagers trying to figure out how to make the best of their situation. They're trying to put in an appeal because she doesn't believe she belongs there. You don't know how long each of these kids has been there. You don't know why they're there, to be completely honest with you, because they all kind of lie about how they got there. One of the best things about this book is there's a scene where she has decided she's going to take control of things. She's going to not be so nice anymore. She finds a group of, I don't know the best way to put this. We'll say the biggest enemy in World War II, if you can guess what I'm talking about. She finds his group wandering around. He is yelling commands in German, and she realizes who it is, and she decides, okay, I'm gonna go after him. So she goes up, she trips in front of him, and I know this is spoilers, but honestly it was like my favorite part, because it was just like bullying this in particular person who deserves it. She trips and he starts laughing at her, and it pisses her off. So she gets up and she rips his mustache off, and it was just like who doesn't want to be able to do that, you know? So overall, this story was really fantastic. It kind of made me have some hope in Palahnuik again, that I can read him again. Not that he's a bad author or needs to get better or anything like that. I found a couple others by him that I would like to try and see if I like it, but again, I'm still a little hesitant because of my own personal taste and the things that I can handle when it comes to really graphic things. So yeah, this one was fantastic. I went through it pretty quickly. The whole story's good. It kind of ends on like an open note, like there might be more to it, but I don't think he's ever gonna write more about her or on this story. And that's okay, honestly, because I thought it was wonderful as it is. So yeah. Well, that was all 18 books that I read in 2025. It feels really weird being done this soon. I think this, so far, I've been recording for about an hour total. I'm used to having 3 different videos that are about 45 minutes long each. So, it's, this is new. I'm very proud of myself for having this done in February and not in April like I usually do. But if you've read any of these books and feel differently than I did, please let me know why. If you liked any of these, let me know why. I just want to talk about books. Like, honestly, that's all I want. So, yeah. I appreciate you listening. I'm sorry I kind of went off on a tangent. I get really comfortable filming nowadays and just kind of ramble like I am right now. So I'm going to leave it at this. I'm very excited for 2026 and what it holds. I have about a quarter of King Sorrow by Joe Hill left right now. It has been absolutely fantastic, and honestly, I cannot wait to discuss that in a video. I have lots of plans for what I would like to read this year, so we'll see if I can uphold that. But for now, I'm going to end this video and get my baby. I can't wait to see you all in the next video. I hope you're all having a great day, an even better week, and until next time, happy reading.